Revealed. Millionaire's dinner surprise. He discovers 3 identical twins with unexpected ties. Mark Thompson stood in the heart of his grand foyer, staring into the abyss of his own mind, an uneasy feeling bubbling beneath the surface of his meticulously curated life. The chandeliers sparkled above him, casting glittering shadows that danced along the marble floors of his opulent home. Guests were milling about, toasting glasses filled with imported wines, discussing the latest innovations that his tech startup had produced. On paper, he was a success, yet deep within, he felt an ever-looming disconnection, as if he were an outsider in his own life. The laughter that surrounded him felt foreign. Was this what success looked like? Or was it an elaborate mask he wore to hide the gnawing discomfort? As he adjusted his tailored cufflinks, allowing the fabric to take hold of his focus, a sense of dread washed over him, an unsettling whisper challenging the foundations of his success. He could hear echoes of his mentor, a man who had taught him the weight of integrity and the joy of simplicity, surfacing in his thoughts. Mark found himself grappling with the dichotomy of his lifestyle, the wealth he flaunted, versus the humble values instilled by his late mentor. Those values felt more like a distant memory than a guiding light. Was he truly living his best life? Or had he traded authenticity for opulence? Before Mark could dwell further, the sound of commotion shattered his reverie. The grand double doors swung open, revealing 3 twin sisters, identical in appearance yet starkly different in essence. Their entrance was magnetic, capturing the attention of the room with an infectious energy that contrasted sharply with the polished decorum of the evening. He felt his heart race as an overwhelming realization swept over him. What were these sisters doing in his upscale domain? Before he could respond, they began to talk. Nina spoke about her tireless dedication as a schoolteacher, while Tara shared her dreams of becoming an artist, despite her daily challenges as a waitress. Lily's bold narratives about the obstacles she faced in redefining success had the room captivated. The contrast between their lives and his silver spoon existence became starkly apparent. With every anecdote, Mark's pulse quickened, the knot tightening in his stomach. Their stories resonated with a raw honesty that punctured the carefully constructed bubble of his affluent life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet as laughter erupted and dinner began, the tension beneath his composed exterior only deepened. With every clinking of glasses, discussions emerged about what true success meant, igniting a fierce debate. Mark felt pressure mount in his chest, the whispers of guilt nagging at him. As the twins pushed back against his narratives of hard work and meritocracy, he felt his defenses rise. Did they truly understand the effort it took to build a life like his? Opportunities aren't equal. Nina's voice rang through the air, cutting sharp through the laughter. Can you really say you faced what we faced? In that moment, Mark felt exposed, vulnerable in ways even wealth could not shield him from. He hesitated, the shadows of his mentor looming larger in his mind, challenging him to confront the privilege that allowed him to walk this path. Everything rocked him to his core as his racing thoughts spun deeper into a labyrinth of confusion, guilt, and determination. As he opened his mouth to respond, a simmering realization threatened to erupt. The air thickened with unspoken words as he stood at the edge of something profound, his heart racing with the anticipation of transformation. Yet the night only intensified the conflict swirling within him. What would it take to bridge the chasm between his privilege and their struggles? Mark took a deep breath, grounding himself in the swirling chaos around him. The laughter of his guests felt increasingly distant, a backdrop to the internal cacophony that played in his mind. Each laugh echoed like a taunt, urging him to justify his elevated status yet again. He could feel the weight of each twin's story pressing against the cracks in his facade, threatening to spill his carefully guarded secrets and vulnerabilities into the open. "Can't you see?" Lily pressed, her eyes glinting with a passion that felt almost palpable. "You speak of hard work, but what about the unlevel playing field that some of us had to navigate? It's easy for you. You had your success paved ahead of you." Mark's heart shrank with her every word. He wanted to defend himself, to articulate the late nights and relentless ambition that he felt had justified his rise. But the words got stuck in his throat, weighed down by the shadow of self-doubt. The truth, buried deep underneath his bravado, clawed at him. He had never faced the hardships they detailed with such vivid detail. "Your perspective is incredibly relevant," he finally managed, surprising himself with his willingness to engage. "But I've worked hard for everything I have. At what point do we take personal accountability for our lives?" The question felt hollow, even to him. Nina's gaze softened, the fire of confrontation giving way to something almost compassionate. "Accountability doesn't dismiss the impact of privilege, Mark. Acknowledging your advantages doesn't mean discounting your hard work." The room felt still, the laughter dimming as others leaned in, drawn to the churning dynamic that unfolded. In that moment, Mark's rigid posture slackened slightly, a flicker of realization washing over him. The conversation was not merely an attack, it was an invitation to introspection. What had he truly sacrificed in his climb to the top? The thought haunted him. Amidst the chatter of the party, time seemed suspended, allowing him a fleeting escape from his surface-level reality. Memories of late nights studying with mentors, the pressure to succeed pressing against him like a weight, rushed forth. Yet, he juxtaposed them with the visceral stories of the twins, encounters with discrimination, their struggles for educational resources, and the constant battle to rise above systemic barriers. He was no stranger to adversity, but was his adversity truly comparable? As each sister took turns sharing, Mark felt the walls guarding his heart vulnerable, yet refreshing. He leaned into their experiences instead of shying away. They spoke of hope intertwined with adversity and resilience that felt alien yet strangely inspiring. The tension radiating from the sisters forced him to ask unflinching questions, not just of them, but of himself. It was Tara's soulful recount of her dreams flickering in the shadows of a monotonous job that struck him hardest. "I want to create something that speaks to people," she said, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time, Mark understood the duality of passion and survival, how one could thrive while barely staying afloat. "Maybe I need to reevaluate what success looks like," he said, almost to himself, feeling the words reverberate through the solemn air, breaking the tension. A dangerous thrill surged through him as he embraced this inquiry. Could he reshape his life's narrative, creating significance beyond wealth? As the night continued, conversations weaved around him like a beautiful tapestry of interconnected lives, each strand representing a unique struggle. His heart pulsed with newfound energy, possibilities unraveling before him. He wanted to act, but how? Should he reach out to help create equal opportunities? The thought ignited a flicker of excitement deep within him. As the evening wore on, contemplating his next move remained ever present. But Mark also felt the growing weight of expectation. Would his privileged background tarnish any attempt at garnishing genuine empathy? His thoughts were abruptly interrupted as Tara raised her glass, her voice cutting through the chatter. To asking hard questions and finding the courage to answer them, even when it hurts. Mark raised his glass, his heart racing. What he didn't know was that the evening had set forth a chain of events that would not only challenge his identity, but put him on a collision course with his past. The inevitable moment he must confront the choices he made that led him here. Where would this new path lead? A confrontation with his legacy, or the birth of a new purpose? The air around him thickened with potential as the first hints of dawn crept through the morning sky. The moment of real change hung tantalizingly close. But would he seize it? Mark awoke the next morning, his mind still swirling with the gravity of Tara's toast and the cascading emotions it unraveled. The sunlight penetrated his room like a flickering spotlight, illuminating shadows he had long ignored. Restless shadows from his past began to take form, clamoring for recognition. There was a nagging awareness that the revelations of the previous evening extended beyond a mere personal epiphany. They propelled him toward a daunting reckoning. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, the hardwood floor cool beneath his bare feet. Physical discomfort pierced the residue of emotional turmoil. He pondered the lives of the twins, the sacrifices they made for their aspirations. Did they see passion as a privilege? Could they understand his struggles through their lens? As he prepared for the day, Mark caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. He scrutinized his reflection, searching for the determination he once wielded comfortably. The person staring back was a stranger, enveloped in uncertainties that had crept in overnight. Could success truly be redefined? A mental and emotional recalibration was in order. But what would that mean for him, both personally and professionally? At the office, the atmosphere was charged with the usual hustle, but it felt foreign today. The sound of clattering keyboards and murmur of conference calls irritated instead of inspired. His colleagues greeted him with friendly banter, the banality of which exacerbated his inner conflict. The stark contrast between their superficial aspirations and his newly galvanized purpose felt unbearable. Mark could sense a growing detachment from the goals that once fueled his ambition. "Hey, Mark, your thoughts on the performance report?" Colin waved a folder in the air, oblivious to Mark's distracted state. Can we discuss that later?" Mark replied, trying to maintain composure while feeling like a shell of his former self. As he settled into his office, the quiet isolation urged him to reconsider what success looked like. He pulled out a notepad, the one he had often used for brainstorming new strategies and ideas, and flipped to a blank page. The lines stared back at him, echoing the blank slate he needed to create in his life. Slowly, the words flowed. Define success beyond wealth. It felt freeing, yet daunting to question everything he had built. The definition of success had always been straightforward: high performance, profits, and status. But as memories of the twins' stories buzzed like restless bees in his mind, he wondered if those objectives could coexist with meaningful impact. Mark began outlining potential initiatives he could champion: mentoring programs, diversity in hiring, or developing avenues for underprivileged youth to access education and resources. With each idea transcribed, enthusiasm flickered back to life, almost like a long-forgotten flame. But as he brainstormed, a wave of doubt flooded over him. Were these merely ideals anchored in guilt? Was he inauthentic, seeking redemption cloaked as altruism instead of genuine care? The hesitations persisted, prickling beneath his skin. They demanded he confront the heart of his motivations and the privilege that had shielded him from such introspection. Disillusioned, he slammed the notepad shut. Facing the prospect of change forced him to wrestle with not just his goals, but his identity. He needed to move beyond superficial adjustments and initiate meaningful engagement. But how does one authentically begin such profound work when they've lived unchallenged for so long? The phone buzzed, jolting him from his tangled web of thoughts. It was Tara. Her name on the screen felt heavy with unresolved intrigue. Hesitantly, he answered. "Oh, hey Mark, I was wondering if you'd be interested in having a chat about ideas I shared last night. I think we could collaborate on something meaningful." Her voice pulled him back toward possibility, igniting again the small yet burgeoning embers of hope. "Absolutely," he replied, a newfound determination coiling around his words. But as their conversation progressed, another question swirled in the depths of his mind. Would his partnership with the twins cement his commitment to change, or merely serve as a facade, an attempt to silence his conscience without altering the fabric of his existence? The notion loomed larger, casting an introspective shadow over their discussion. Would his journey forward be anchored in authenticity, or would he find himself ensnared in the very privilege he sought to transcend? The resolve to act was growing, but so was the uncertainty of how deeply he would be willing to plunge into his own guilt-ridden core. The potential for transformational collaboration dangled temptingly before him, urging exploration of uncharted territories. The answer hung precariously in the air, demanding a follow-up. Could their paths intertwine meaningfully, or was this yet another iteration of his own privilege at play? As he hung up, the pulsating questions resonated in his mind, foreshadowing the storm of revelations ahead. What hidden truths lay ahead that would test his identity and reshape his vision of success? The collision course with his past was imminent, and he braced for the inevitable. Confrontation and clarity awaited on the horizon. Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard as he replayed Tara's invitation in his mind. The idea of collaboration excited him, yet it also alarmed him. What did he really have to offer? With each tick of the clock, uncertainty twisted in his stomach, reminding him of his indecision. "What's eating you?" Colin's voice cut through his reverie, bringing Mark back to the chaos of the office. He looked up, forcing a smile. "Just thinking," he replied, attempting to brush off the intensity of his internal struggle. Yet, he felt a flicker of annoyance. How could anyone around him retain such lightheartedness when everything seemed fractured in his world? "About that report?" Colin persisted, but Mark waved him off, turning back to his screen. He couldn't afford to remain bogged down by the minutiae of performance metrics. His focus had shifted. Now the challenge involved redefinition of himself, of success, and of his path forward. The twins had forcefully pulled him from complacency, and he needed to embrace that disruption rather than fear it. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a calendar reminder for his meeting with Tara and the twins later that day. The anticipation rekindled a nervous energy within him. What if he failed to contribute ideas? What if they discovered he was just a man clinging to the vestiges of what once defined him? With a breath, he opened the notepad again, the potential of uncharted territory lingering in the air. This time, he didn't start with lofty ideals, but a simple entry. What do I truly want? The question hit him like a thunderclap, reverberating deeply in his conscience. Despite being encased in privilege, he felt deprived of clarity. The desire for authenticity propelled him to write an almost confessional list. Impact, connection, mentorship, purpose. Each word he penned was like a strand in a web he hadn't realized needed weaving. He felt his heart rate quicken. Was this yearning, this raw honesty, a sign of growth? As the meeting hour approached, Mark's mind was flooded with memories. The twins, Tara, their stories of struggle and aspiration loomed large. What was it about their collective experiences that resonated so deeply? Perhaps it was their courage to confront adversity head-on, to aspire not just for personal gain, but for creating a ripple effect of change. Arriving at the cafe, he noted the small details, a mismatched selection of chairs, flickering overhead lights that seemed oblivious to the cold winter outside. The environment resonated with him. It was imperfect, yet abundant in character, not unlike the disarray of thoughts in his own mind. Tara and the twins were already seated, their animated conversation framing a warmth that instantly beckoned him. As he took a seat, he felt the weight of his intentions pressing upon him. "Glad you made it." Tara greeted him warmly, her enthusiasm wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. "Thanks for inviting me," Mark said, but an undercurrent of self-doubt pulsed beneath his voice. Would his contributions amount to anything meaningful? After pleasantries diminished, Mark realized the onus was on him. They were eager for his thoughts about the ideas he had tossed around so freely before, yet now they felt heavy with expectation. He swallowed hard, allowing the silence to stretch into the room before speaking. "I've been reflecting," he began, wresting vulnerability from his stubbornness. about what success means and how I can contribute effectively. It's taking me to places I never anticipated." Tara leaned forward, and the twins exchanged curious glances. The tension crackled around them, igniting the air. "Like how?" one of the twins inquired, her gaze locked onto his, daring him to delve deeper. An impulse surged within him. "Mentorship, I think. I want to bridge the gap for those who feel voiceless. I want to create opportunities that empower rather than just profit." As they listened, Mark's heart raced. He felt raw, laid bare before them. Would they applaud him, critique him? In that moment, he realized he didn't just want approval. He needed validation of his journey through their eyes. What was he really hungry for? A connection, or simply the acknowledgement of his privilege? The twins' expressions morphed from curiosity to contemplation, and he steeled himself against the unfolding uncertainty, praying they would find his words authentic. "In that case," Tara said slowly, "let's dive deeper. How can we actually make that happen?" The narrative shifted, and a sense of urgency permeated the air. Mark could feel the dynamic changing. Their engagement was not just about proposals, but about their willingness to confront his vulnerabilities and aspirations head-on. "Let's explore it together," he replied, a surge of determination igniting in his chest. Here, in this moment, he teetered on the brink of his transformation, but the looming question remained. Could he sustain the momentum, or would his privilege cloud the path he yearned to forge? As the conversation unfolded, Mark couldn't shake the anticipation of what would be revealed next. The stakes were increasingly high, and now he felt the weight of his aspirations colliding with the uncomfortable truth of his identity. Could he truly reshape himself amidst this charged atmosphere, or would he find himself ensnared in the very privilege he sought to dismantle? The lingering tension electrified the air, propelling Mark into the next chapter of his journey, where the ultimate reckoning awaited. Mark felt the atmosphere thicken with expectation as he sat in the cafe, aware that each word could either lead him further into a new realm or trap him in the familiar confines of his old self. Tara's question echoed in his mind, urging him to articulate the unformed ideas swirling within. This was not just a meeting. It was a pivotal moment, one he had been both eager and terrified to face. "It's about creating a platform for mentorship," he repeated, feeling the gravity of his theme take shape. "I want to build something where voices can be amplified and potential can truly be unlocked." As the words left his mouth, he sensed a shift. The twins leaned in closer, their attention unwavering. Their faces reflected curiosity. But there was something more, an unspoken challenge. "What's stopping you?" one of the twins asked, her brow furrowing slightly as she searched his eyes for sincerity. "You talk about desire and impact, yet here you are, playing it safe." A jolt of recognition surged through him. She was right. The very privilege he had valued had become an anchor, weighing him down instead of propelling him forward. His pulse quickened, the truth prompting a tangled mess of emotions. "I suppose I'm afraid. Afraid of not being enough, of being just another cliché in a world that needs authentic change." "Fear can be a good teacher," Tara interjected gently, her voice firm yet nurturing. "But it can't drive your decisions. Tell us how you envision this mentorship initiative." Mark took a deep breath. Every inhale felt like stepping closer to unveiling the unrefined fragment of himself he was trying to shape into something meaningful. "I'm thinking of workshops that focus on skill building, real-world insights that give people the tools they need. But alongside that, I want to foster connections to create a community of support." He could see the glimmer of intrigue in their expressions, but he could also feel the weight of his intentions mingling with doubt. "And what's the first step?" the other twin asked, leaning back but never losing her engagement. Mark hesitated. The cascade of ideas in his mind threatened to overwhelm him. A workshop here, a support group there. "I guess, starting small," he replied, the certainty in his voice wavering. "Maybe a series of discussions, getting feedback, refining along the way. I need to discover what these potential mentors might expect. An unsettling silence hung between them, each of their gazes expecting more. The challenge of defining his journey loomed larger than he had anticipated. This was a moment of personal reckoning. Could he take action, or would he default back to the safety of inaction? Mark. Tara's voice broke through his chaotic thoughts. If you truly want to navigate this journey, you can't just talk about it. You need to put forth the first step. What are you willing to sacrifice to make your vision a reality? Panic gripped him, for sacrifice was an uncomfortable word, especially defined by his previous privileges. What could he give away? Time? Comfort? The risk of failure? The realization knocked the wind out of him. His easy life offered many luxuries, yet he had grown increasingly aware they came with unearned security. I'll need to invest time, commit to conversations, embrace discomfort. He stumbled through the implications as they washed over him. The more he conceded to these realizations, the sharper his focus became. But above all, I need to engage with others who are living this experience. It can't just be theory, it must be rooted in reality. Encouraged by Tara and the twins' attentive nods, Mark felt a surge of clarity. Each declaration was a keystone, building a framework where stepping into discomfort became the foundation of his purpose. Then let's set a timeline, one of the twins asserted, her tone commanding yet collaborative. If we don't put a date on it, it remains an idea. Aim for a pilot workshop in the next month. We can help. A rush of determination surged through Mark, spurred on by their commitment. Yes, let's do it. I can start reaching out to potential participants within the week. As the conversation continued to evolve, bubbling with excitement over logistics and strategies, Mark reveled in the unexpected joy burgeoning within him. For the first time, he felt he was laying the groundwork for something that could truly matter. A legacy waiting to be forged. But a disclosure hung in the balance. He knew he had to confront his own expectations. Would the privilege he felt weighed down by allow him to cultivate genuine connection, or would it intrude upon the authenticity he desperately sought to foster? The question lingered heavily in his mind as the chat deepened, tantalizingly unresolved. As he prepared to wrap up the session, a rush of excitement paired with anxiety coursed through him, awakening the realization that his ambitions were no longer solo ventures. The real challenge awaited. How would he integrate his newfound purpose with the unyielding dynamics of privilege that colored his past? What lay ahead promised a crucible of growth that could either lead to profound connections or chaotic missteps, where the true depth of his character would be tested. The twilight of his previous identity flickered around him, teetering on the edge of transformation. Could I really change? He asked himself as their chatter blurred into the background, stretching into uncertainty. The only certainty was that he stood on the precipice of the unknown, and the path would unfurl before him only if he dared to step forward. The following week, Mark sat at his dining room table, papers and notes strewn about like fallen leaves. Each one held a fragment of his burgeoning vision, an intricate puzzle waiting to be solved. The room, usually quiet and tinged with familiarity, now echoed with a sense of urgency. The promise of the pilot workshop loomed, yet an unsettling sense of dread lurked beneath his determination. Taking a sip of coffee, he scanned the sheets before him, feeling tension creep into his shoulders. Who would want to attend a workshop created by him? He had spent most of his life sheltered by certainty and privilege, while now he was about to step into uncharted territory. The twin voices from the cafe bounced around in his mind, reminding him of his fears about vulnerability. Mark clenched his jaw, determined to focus. There's no room for hesitation, he muttered under his breath. He picked up his phone, swiping through his contacts. The faces and names were a collage of friends, colleagues and acquaintances, but whom could he reach out to for assistance, for insight? Who would honestly care about his initiative? His finger hovered over Tara's name, hesitating as doubts reared their heads again. Would she see him as an imposter? The glimpse of his old self, wrapped securely in self-doubt, threatened to split apart his resolve. He needed to detach from his previous narratives. He couldn't afford to let his past dictate his possible future. Then, as if flicking a switch, he dialed her number. "Hi, Tara. It's Mark. Can we meet? I'm feeling stuck and could really use your advice on this mentorship thing," he said as soon as she answered. "Absolutely. How about tomorrow?" she replied with an enthusiasm that buoyed his spirits. As he hung up, a mixture of relief and anxiety washed over him. Reaching out felt like a leap, one that he hadn't expected to embrace this early in the process. It was a small step, yet it spurred an unexpected rush of excitement. The next day, Mark arrived at the cafe, noticing the vibrant energy of the place filled with chatter and clinking cups. He spotted Tara at their usual corner table, her smile a reassuring beacon. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, he dove into the depths of his insecurities. "I feel like I'm building this thing on sand," Mark confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if nobody shows up? What if they think I'm just some rich guy trying to play savior?" Tara listened intently, her gaze steady. "You're not trying to save anyone. You're creating a space for shared growth. Start with authenticity. Share your journey, your struggles. People resonate with honesty." Her words ignited a flicker of understanding within him. He had always presented the polished versions of his endeavors, but the power of connection lay in vulnerability, the willingness to reveal one's failures and fears. Mark leaned back, considering this new perspective. "So, what should I do? Begin with my own story?" "Yes, it's that simple. Draw them in, let them see you, all of you," she encouraged. "We all have something to learn from each other. You'll find a way to inspire them, but it starts with you being honest about your journey." As he absorbed her advice, a revelation dawned. His past experiences, including his privileges, were not mere stumbling blocks, but foundational elements for connection. Understanding his struggles would serve as an essential bridge to others who had faced their own challenges. "That could work," he murmured, a new sense of purpose sparking to life. "I've never thought about it that way." They spent hours strategizing, brainstorming potential topics, approaches, and connections to engage. The fear that had once gripped him began to loosen its hold, replaced by a burgeoning sense of empowerment. As they wrapped up their meeting, Tara leaned in closer, her voice low yet impactful. "Keep pushing through the discomfort, Mark. You're still going to grapple with your background, but it's how you embody that struggle that counts." He watched as she left the cafe, her words reverberating in his mind. The self-doubt still lingered like fog, but now he had a ray of clarity to pierce through it. He opened his laptop to draft an outreach email, reminding himself each sentence needed to carry authenticity. Yet, as he began typing, a wave of apprehension crashed over him again. What if this initiative floundered? What if the feedback was overwhelmingly negative? Would he crumble under the weight of judgment? Taking a deep breath, Mark reminded himself that every venture carried risks. He was not merely seeking validation. He was carving a path to personal evolution, both for himself and potential mentees. He understood this truly was just the beginning. As he finalizes his thoughts, Mark felt a pulse of uncertainty. He was eager to take this initial step, but dread settled in, returning like an unwelcome guest. The reality of inevitable challenges loomed. How would he navigate this newfound path amidst the old shadows of self-doubt? Mark paused, staring at the blinking cursor. The stakes were rising, and he knew that behind every click of the keyboard lay the potential for failure or newfound potential. What awaited him as he journeyed deeper into the unknown? And would he have the courage to face the setbacks that would undoubtedly follow? The next day, Mark woke up with a knot in his stomach, the impending launch of his pilot workshop looming closer. Despite the buzz of excitement Tara had ignited within him, a heavy blanket of anxiety still threatened to smother his resolve. He sat on the edge of his bed, the sunlight spilling through the window, illuminating the path he nervously contemplated stepping onto. Today, he would finally unveil his vision to the world, his very own attempt at mentorship. His heart raced as he descended into his makeshift home office. The clutter of notes and ideas had palpably diminished, each paper representing a new strategy, a renewed commitment, and the promise of connection. He took a moment to gather himself, inhaling deeply before setting to work on the finishing touches of his outreach email. Each keystroke came with the weight of expectation. He wasn't just speaking to unknown faces, but was drawing on a part of himself he had long kept hidden. As the email grew, he found himself oscillating between exhilaration and dread, each sentence demanding honesty, while simultaneously feeding his worries. What if sharing his vulnerabilities didn't resonate? What if the attendees perceived him as nothing more than a misguided fool? He hesitated, fingers lingering over the keyboard as doubt functioned like a persistent echo, nagging at him constantly. Suddenly he remembered Tara's encouraging face, her words ringing in his ears. "You'll find a way to inspire them." That idea began to take root within him. He could be a vessel for authenticity, not perfection. He decided to anchor his email with his own story, complete, flawed, and real. As he typed, he shared snippets of his past, the fears that had long paralyzed him, and the pivotal moment when he decided to take control. An idea sparked, a sentence emerging from the depths of his mind. "I am as nervous about this workshop as many of you might be about attending it." He paused after typing that line, feeling a semblance of connection to imaginary faces on the other side of the screen. His heart lightened just a bit. Maybe, just maybe, vulnerability could create a bridge where he feared chasms existed. After several revisions and a flurry of scrolling through inspirational quotes about growth and authenticity, he hit send. The cursor blinked back at him, seemingly mocking his inability to shake the anxiety clinging to him. But he had done it. He had bared a part of himself. Almost as if a dam had burst, notifications filled his inbox throughout the day. Responses streamed in, curiosity and encouragement from friends and former colleagues. Some expressed excitement, while others shared their own apprehensions about mentorship. Each message built on a foundation of connection, dispelling the fears that had previously clouded his vision. The thrill felt intoxicating. And suddenly, the weight of dread lifted, momentarily replaced by a growing curiosity about the individuals he would meet. As he engaged with their messages, the idea that he could be contributing positively to their journeys settled in his chest, both terrifying and exhilarating. He was not alone. They had their own stories, struggles, and journeys, and perhaps together they could forge something meaningful. Just as he began brainstorming ways to curate an engaging introduction for the participants, a familiar name popped up in his notifications. It was Sam, a former supervisor who had mentored him years ago. Mark frowned at the message. Sam had always pushed for conformity and results, rarely showing any empathy or open dialogue. The email only read, "I heard about your venture. Let's chat." Mark's stomach knotted again, unearthing old feelings of inadequacy. Sam's perspective could be valuable, but also toxic. He felt a war erupting inside. Would he remain steadfast in his focus on authenticity, or would he be tempted to slip back into the mold that Sam represented? As he gingerly navigated the weight of that message, he realized he stood at a crucial crossroads. Would he stand firm in his commitment to vulnerability, even in the face of skepticism from those who had doubted him in the past? Determined to embrace the journey, Mark opened his notes again. The looming agenda of his workshop lay waiting, but as he wrote, he couldn't shake the feeling that this conversation with Sam would challenge everything he was starting to build. What if engaging with Sam would require him to confront not just his fears, but also inauthenticity within himself? Perhaps it would push him even further down the path he had tentatively stepped onto, forcing him to confront the very nature of his transformation. The stakes were higher than ever. And with that thought in mind, Mark prepared to face the shadows of his past. Would standing up to Sam reveal the strength he had gathered, Or would it unravel the newfound sense of purpose he had started to cultivate? Mark stared at the blinking cursor on his screen, the words of Sam's email echoing in the back of his mind. He had long distanced himself from the strictures of Sam's mentorship, having liberated himself from a past that demanded conformity at the expense of honesty. But now, a familiar voice from those days tugged at him, tempting him to revert to old habits. He took a deep breath, forcing his attention back to the work in front of him. As he considered how to structure his workshop agenda, the foundations he had worked to lay seemed shaky. Would his commitment to authenticity withstand the scrutiny of his old mentor? Sam had a way of dissecting ideas until they bled. Each critique had a sharpness that would cut through his newfound layers of resolve. Yet, it was a new era for Mark. He needed to harness that anxiety into a tool for growth, rather than letting it immobilize him. With renewed determination, Mark began crafting the workshop's outline. Each section was a nod to the journey he had undertaken. Discussions about vulnerability, ownership of one's past, and the importance of empathy. These were not just topics. They were the very essence of his metamorphosis. He paused, quill in hand, feeling the weight of self-doubt pressing heavily. Would participants latch onto his lessons? Or would they see through them, sensing they came from a muddled place within him? The looming conversation with Sam filled his thoughts with uncertainty. The idea of conversing face-to-face felt perilous. What if he couldn't articulate his newfound resolve? What if he faltered under Sam's critical gaze? On impulse, Mark returned to his emails and hit reply to Sam. "I'd love to chat. Let's set a time." He felt a wave of nausea wash over him as he hit send, a decision punctuated by tension. He was stepping into the arena, ready or not. The afternoon wore on, and each tick of the clock morphed into a countdown, the hours slowly slipping away. With a few eager replies from potential workshop participants still buzzing in his inbox, he found solace in their excitement, a stark contrast to the dread brewing from thoughts of Sam. Perhaps he could lean on their enthusiasm as a shield. Feeling inspired, Mark envisioned what connection looked like. He could facilitate discussions that invited vulnerability without judgment. He remembered how deeply impactful it felt when he had unburdened his own struggles in safe spaces before. His past mentors might have called it softness, but he recognized that softness as strength, a vital aspect of being human. Just as he was putting final touches on an icebreaker exercise that would encourage openness, a new email notification startled him. It was Sam again. The message was precise and blunt. "How about tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I think it's vital we discuss how mentorship needs to adapt to today." Mark's heart raced. Tomorrow was uncomfortably close. With the impending workshop looming and this unexpected pressure from Sam, he felt as if he were being pulled in two directions. On one side, he had the chance to stay true to himself, his vision for mentorship rooted in authenticity and vulnerability. On the other, the doubt seeded by Sam's high expectations threatened to unravel his resolve. He rubbed his temples and leaned back in his chair. The sweat began to bead on his brow. This was more than a conversation. It was a reckoning. Could he affirm his beliefs while standing before the potent criticisms he had tried to escape? He felt an intense tug of war within him, as if each decision he made was a tentative step toward a larger transformation, or a regression back into old patterns. Sleep eluded him that night, plagued by thoughts of what he would say and how Sam would react. He was determined to confront the past, but fearful of the fallout. As dawn broke, Mark stood before the window, sunlight spilling into the room, illuminating his thoughts. Would this conversation be a crucial moment in his journey toward authentic mentorship? Or would it send him spiraling back into insecurity and conformity, making him question the very foundations he had begun to build? The uncertainty churned within him as he prepared. With a resolute nod, he stepped away from the window and gathered his notes. It was time to face the shadows of his past. What was on the horizon would either affirm his journey or test it to its limits. With every passing moment, Mark felt the weight of his resolve harden. He was ready, or at least he would convince himself he was. The time had come to face Sam, and with it, possibly compel a new chapter in his own evolution. But would this encounter lead to affirmation, or would it unravel everything he had strived to become? Mark arrived at the coffee shop, a familiar haunt from his past, where laughter mingled with the steam from freshly brewed coffee. The aroma hung in the air like a distant reminder of moments he'd shared with Sam, basking in sentiments of early mentorship. Today, however, the atmosphere felt charged with apprehension. He ran a hand through his hair, anxiety mingling with anticipation as he scanned the room for Sam. Would he be greeted with a knowing nod or an overwhelming critique? He took a deep breath, reminding himself of his purpose, to assert his growth, to confront not just Sam, but the echoes of an identity he had spent years trying to redefine. When Sam entered, dressed impeccably as always, Mark felt a rush of memories, mentorship that had shaped him, yet shackled him. He stood, forcing a smile, masking the turmoil brewing beneath. Sam's eyes glimmered with that familiar piercing intensity, disarming and intimidating all at once. "Mark," he spoke, his voice slicing through the noise of the cafe. "Good to see you. Let's get to it." "Sure," Mark replied, settling into the booth, his palms clammy against the polished wood. The conversation began with casual pleasantries, but an undercurrent of expectation coursed through their exchange. Sam leaned forward, the slightest smile hinting at something calculative. "I hear you're gearing up for a workshop," Sam began, an edge of curiosity laced with skepticism. "What's the premise? What do you stand for?" As he laid out his vision, an exploration of vulnerability and authenticity in mentorship, Mark felt himself oscillate between confidence and self-doubt. Each word was a choice, each idea a reflection of the man he hoped to become. Sam listened intently, his expression inscrutable yet laden with signals Mark was desperate to decode. "Interesting," Sam replied carefully. "But do you really think that's enough? Vulnerability is one thing, but leaders need to exhibit strength. Are you prepared for the realities of pushing people out of their comfort zones?" Mark's pulse quickened. This was it. The moment he had anticipated, yet dreaded. Strength doesn't have to manifest as rigidity, Sam. When we embrace vulnerability, we create stronger connections. Trust is foundational. Isn't that what we agreed mentorship should be about? The tension thickened as Sam leveled his gaze. "You think what you learned under my guidance was somehow flawed?" Mark's breath caught, the weight of the past simmering just beneath the surface. He could feel the familiar pull, drawing him into the old narrative where Sam's opinion dictated his self-worth. This was a pivotal moment, not just for their discussion, but for Mark's autonomy as a leader. "No," Mark said, steadier now. "Your teachings helped me, but I've discovered new perspectives along the way. I learned that mentorship is not a one-size-fits-all model. It's about adapting and evolving." Sam regarded him thoughtfully, as if unpacking this revelation. "And what makes you think others will be receptive to this pivot?" "I believe people crave authenticity," Mark asserted, the conviction growing warmer in his chest. "They're tired of masks. My goal is to meet them where they are, not as a mentor dictating from above, but as a guide on their own journeys." Sam paused, absorbing the shift in Mark's narrative. In that silence, a fragile space opened. The opportunity for growth began to unfurl. Yet doubt lingered in the corners of Mark's mind. Would this openness be met with understanding or ruthlessness? "Your passion is clear," Sam eventually replied. "But you'll face resistance, Mark. Many prefer comfort over confrontation." Mark felt his resolve tighten. "Then my responsibility as a mentor is to challenge that comfort, to help them navigate their own fears." A flicker of admiration crossed Sam's features, quickly masked by a furrowed brow. "All right, let's see how that plays out. I'll support you in this workshop, but I expect results." Mark swallowed hard, a complicated blend of relief and challenge coursing through him. He had stepped into the conversation with uncertainty, now finding an unexpected alliance simmering beneath their rivalry. There was still much to navigate, yet he felt the first whispers of empowerment grounding him in this exchange. As they wrapped up, Mark considered the transformation he hadn't anticipated, an acknowledgement of his evolution, the possibility of reconciliation with his past mentor. But as he walked away, exhilaration mixed with anxiety. Had he truly forged a path forward? Or was he merely trading one form of scrutiny for another? The commitment to authenticity lay before him like a vast expanse, uncertain and filled with potential. Was he ready to fully embrace it, regardless of the shadows that loomed? Mark's heart raced as he stepped back into the bustling street, feeling the weight of the day, of decisions yet to be made. Yet, deep down, a new spark ignited, a compelling promise that change was within reach. His phone buzzed, and as he glanced down, he saw a message that would alter his trajectory once again. "Let's discuss your progress. When can we meet?" Mark felt the stirrings of challenge rekindle within him. The next confrontation was on the horizon, and this time he wasn't just facing Sam. It was time to confront the very foundation of who he had become. Mark stood in the office that had once felt like a cage, gazing out at the bustling cityscape beyond the glass. The whirlwind of his transformation had brought him face to face with both his vulnerability and newfound purpose. The shadows of his past fled before the blinding light of clarity. Months had passed since that fateful dinner with the twins, and layers of realization had peeled away the surface-level comforts of his life. He had fully committed to his vision, creating a mentorship program that championed authenticity and understanding. The first workshop had been an overwhelming success, drawing participants from various backgrounds, all eager to share their stories and struggles. Mark's heart swelled with pride as he recalled their candid conversations, the laughter, the tears, and the unspoken bonds formed amidst shared vulnerability. The shift from a life clinging to privilege into one committed to creating pathways for others was transformative. He had cultivated workshops that integrated real-world insights with collective dialogues, aiming to amplify unheard voices. Each session became an exploration, not merely lessons imparted, but symbiotic learning experiences crafted in trust. Looking back at the hopelessness he had felt, Mark now recognized how deeply he had grown. Once confined to a bubble of privilege, he had learned to engage with discomfort, to allow it to guide him rather than deter him. He leaned into discussions that challenged him, growing more adept at facilitating spaces where empathy thrived. No longer did he shy away from addressing systemic inequities. Instead, he focused on dismantling barriers while nurturing potential. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from mentees. Each face represented a story, a testament to the lives being impacted through collaboration. The most recent message from Tara illuminated his screen. "Can we meet to discuss future initiatives? Exciting opportunities ahead." Mark grinned, the enthusiasm flooding through him. He wasn't standing alone. He had forged a community that thrived on mutual growth. On the surface, the corporate world surrounding him hadn't changed much, but he had. In board meetings, Mark confidently articulated the need for diversity and inclusion, easily intertwining the lessons he had learned through personal growth. Decisions that once felt daunting now unfolded effortlessly as he engaged his colleagues in discussions about the importance of mentorship and systemic change. Even Sam had recognized the impact, offering support, a quiet acknowledgement of Mark's steadfast commitment to authentic mentorship. That morning, as he prepared for his upcoming meeting with Tara and the twins, he stood taller, grounded in the profound realization of his evolution. The initial fear of being perceived as a rich guy playing savior had dissipated. He was not here to save anyone. He was here to facilitate empowerment and connection, a shift rooted in humility and respect. The conversation with the twins was vibrant and buzzing as they bounced ideas off one another, the synergy palpable. "Mark," Tara began, Your approach has sparked incredible interest. What do you envision as our next step? His heart raced, exhilarated at the possibilities unfurling before him. I think we should expand our outreach, host community-driven workshops that allow not just for mentorship, but for redefining what success looks like across varied perspectives. We can invite different voices to lead discussions each month. Nina chimed in. Let's involve local schools. We can offer mentorship to students, helping them craft their paths. Their ideas took root, forming a plan that stretched beyond the boundaries of his previous identity, pushing all of them to transcend their limits collectively. Mark's reflection in the cafe's window caught his eye. Here stood a man who had reclaimed his narrative, not merely as an individual, but as a catalyst for change. He had demolished the barriers once erected by his privilege, embracing the roots of vulnerability and authenticity that had paved the way for deeper connections. Today marked more than just another meeting. It was a commitment solidified. With purpose in his heart and clarity in his vision, he had harnessed his growth to effect lasting change. As they wrapped up their planning, a wave of satisfaction washed over him. He could scarcely recall the unfulfilled, disconnected persona he had embodied just months prior. Transformation had not been a straight path, but a winding journey peppered with challenges that had become opportunities for growth. Today, Mark stood proud, finally achieving the personal and professional fulfillment he had sought. He realized that success was not defined solely by wealth. Rather, it was cultivated through connection, compassion, and fostering a supportive environment for others. With smiles all around, they planned their next steps, marking a significant leap in their collaborative journey. Mark felt the thrill of potential surge through him. This was more than a workplace initiative. It was a legacy in the making, built on the principles of equity and mutual respect. His eyes glimmered with excitement as he stepped out of the cafe, the sun shining bright as if to celebrate his newfound clarity. Life welcomed him with open arms, and he was ready to embrace it, knowing that this was just the beginning. Now, as the trials and triumphs awaited, a familiar urge surged within him, and so, he thought, now it was time to share this journey with others. The transformation was tangible. The triumph was within grasp. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our mission of sharing powerful journeys. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the impact of personal growth and connection.